Great. Well, welcome everybody. I am Susan Elliott with Goodegg Investments. I'm in the investor education side of the Goodegg team. I'm joined by Jason Kleiman, who is the head of investor relations and business development here. And we bring you all together for a every other week. We dive in deep to a topic, and so if you have any questions, please feel free to put those up in the chat, and we'll try to address them at the end of the presentation today. This is less interactive, more of us kind of presenting what's on our minds to you at the time. If you want to be on the phone, on a Zoom call, on video with us asking questions live, I encourage you to join our Tuesday popover sessions. Those are just like our office hours. Jason and I, and often other members of the Goodegg team, will just pop in, and you're welcome to bring any questions or just be a fly on the wall, meet other investors. It's kind of a fun time. So that's a good time for that. But for now, today, we're going to dive into the topic of replacing a 100K salary and looking to see if you're on track for that big goal of passive income. Let's see. Before we get started, Jason, tell us a little bit about Goodegg.
Of course, I need to unmute myself. We do this so often, and for some reason, we still forget about this whole idea of unmuting, so I apologize to everybody. So the track record of Goodegg Investments, everybody on this call, I'm sure, has heard me go through this before, but it's always fun to do. So in multifamily, which has been our mainstay for years, we've purchased well over 8,000 multifamily units. It's actually closing in on 9,000 at this point, some of our recent acquisitions. Most of our properties that we've actually gone full cycle on, which is just over 20 now, our hold period has tended to be around 3 years. The market has changed significantly over the last couple of years, so I think that you'll start seeing that get to be a longer stretch. So we're looking at most of our investments over a time horizon of 5+ years at this point, but our track record is 35. We have the luxurious position of we've been able to distribute back out to our investors well over 30 million. It's now over $32 million that we've sent back out in distributions. We're now managing close to 145 million of equity that we've deployed in different deals throughout the country, which is an unbelievable number to me, but we're very proud of that fact. We recently brought in, over the past, gosh, it's only been 9 months or so, we brought in crowdfunding pathways for folks that are maybe not quite accredited yet to be able to invest in some of our funds. We've welcomed in well over 150 new investors that are not accredited just recently. It's now over $4 million in investment capital through those non-accredited pathways, which has been a really exciting thing. It's part of our mission that we want to make our investments available to everyone. And this is one of the ways that we're doing that. Everybody's seen our average equity multiple on properties that we've actually gone full cycle on. It's well over our trusted number of 2x. We're closing in on 2.8. Our average annual return is actually close to 25% now. So we're pretty excited about that. That's our track record. So
Great. Thanks, Jason.
It's an evolving thing.
Well, before we begin this presentation, just a reminder, we are not legal, financial, or tax advice. We are not an advisory firm, but those are great team members to have on your wealth building journey team. So make sure you are seeking out legal advice, financial advice, tax advice to be able to optimize your wealth building plan. Those are essential members of this team. So make sure you're doing that as well. All right, so today is really about tracking our progress. And like I said, we have this goal that we're kind of arbitrarily setting for today's experiment. And that is, when will you have $100,000 in passive income? And I put those mailboxes up here because of that, the term mailbox money. This is just money that's just arriving. Nowadays, it's in your bank account, but that's not as pretty of a picture as these funky mailboxes that I found. So imagine money just kind of arriving in your bank account without you having to do any active work to be able to get it there. This is the financial freedom kind of ultimate dream. It unlocks a lot of other types of things on your journey. So maybe your goal is slightly different, but we're going to take a look at that $100,000 per year in passive income. This is really about goals, right? And this time of year, you're going to start to hear a lot of people talking about your goals for the new year. This is meant to give you motivation as you enter into that phase of your year where you're setting new goals for the year in January. You're looking at at what you've done in the past and give you confidence that you're on the track to meet these long-term goals. We all know the statistics about goals kind of petering out and early in the year. So I really want to give you that like deep confidence and knowing that you're going to make it towards these really long-term goals of having passive income supporting your lifestyle. These are some inspirational photos from my own life about giving myself the motivation and confidence to do the things that I want to do. So if you need to put up a vision board to do that, you can do that as well. So this is just another way to frame the goal conversation. And so today we're going to look at 3 questions. When can I pull $100,000 from my real estate investments? We're going to look at 4 scenarios. So say you're investing $10,000 a year or $20,000, $50,000, or $100,000 a year. When is that magic cash flow of 100 going to hit your bank accounts? Could you choose to start pulling that, in other words, from those investments if you're investing that amount per year? We're also going to take a look and do a little bit of a deep dive into an alternative scenario, a different way of looking at this that's going to potentially get you cash flow sooner. So smaller amounts of passive income sooner without jeopardizing the growth of your portfolio and your ability to have that bigger amount of cash flow, maybe covering all of your financial freedom living expenses later on down the road. And then finally, we're going to look at what can you do this year in order to keep yourself on this roadmap. The path to building long-term wealth, again, is long-term, and it can be really hard to remember that taking small actions every month, every quarter, every year is going to be necessary to get you towards that goal. So what should you be tracking right now to be able to set yourself up for success? Okay, I'm going to present some graphs, and this is all based on passive real estate investments, the type that we offer, whether that's hotels, whether that's multifamily, whether even that's our preferred equity type of investments. This is based on a 1.8x equity multiple over a term of 5 years. Now, you just heard us in our track record slide. Our goal is to 2x your money, right? And we've been really blessed to offer our investors even greater equity multiples on that in the investments that we've had in the past and have shorter hold periods. But this is our like conservative underwriting, right? This is like kind of the bare minimum. I also threw in there some taxes, and that's just so that this is a little more realistic. I'm pulling out taxes on some of that cash flow that you're receiving, as well as the gains from sales, just so that we're not like super overinflating any numbers here. So those are our assumptions on these numbers. Now let's take a look. I'm going to walk you through this. So bear with me here. We're looking at $100,000 in passive income salary, and we're pulling this just from your cash flow. Now, remember, you're also getting profits from the sale of these assets once they're coming due in 5 years, and we're not pulling any of that information here. I also want you to look at the $100,000 salary mark here, the $100,000 way down there, right? You can see that if you didn't pull any cash flow, your cash amount of money that these assets are generating in distributions over the course of 5 years, it grows pretty quickly. So you can see here that, of course, if we were to invest $100,000 per year, you're going to hit that mark earlier. That's in year 11. If you're investing $50,000 a year, that's year 15 that you're going to be able to pull that $100,000 of passive income salary. That to me is kind of motivating to me. I'm like, okay, how can I pull together at least $50,000 a year? And in 15 years, that's a really short runway. I'm going to be able to have $100,000 in passive income, roughly, right? But even with only $20,000 a year, 22 years from right now, you'll be able to have that 100K of passive income. And then those of us who are starting the journey earlier, maybe only able to invest $10,000 a year, you're in your early salary development years, you're hustling and grinding, you're still going to hit this mark in a pretty short amount of time with passive real estate investing. So that's just like kind of our baseline here. Let's talk about what if we were to pull our cash flow and our proceeds. So we're not reinvesting any of our cash flow, or I should say, I'm showing you the numbers of these two numbers combined, right? Of the proceeds from sale, which are going to increase every 5 years, right? Because that's when we get the bump of having a new asset come due. So this is the numbers of cash flow and proceeds. We're able to shave off the time pretty well. Again, there's our $100,000 mark line, and that's what I'm looking at here. So with $100,000, I can do that 3 years faster. I can start pulling my 100K salary in 7 years. And again, you're continuing to grow your equity with that original principal being reinvested, with that additional $100,000 per year being reinvested if you wanted to continue to do that as well. But 7 years from now, you could have that 100K salary with that. Um, you can shave off 3 years with $50,000, 4 years, and 4 years with 20 and $10,000. So we're shaving a little bit of time off that sooner. So again, we're just looking creatively at our portfolio, at what is my goal? When do I want to have $100,000 of passive income? Of course, right now is the answer to that question. But when realistically can I do that without sacrificing the long-term growth of my portfolio? So I don't want to just cash out, right? Maybe I have a really cool business idea and I want to put more time and energy into that, but I don't want to sacrifice my retirement this one day when I don't want to work at all. So we're not cashing out our investments. And the wonderful thing about real estate is it frees us up to use those cash flow, that proceeds from the sale of these assets. If we choose, we can also choose to speed up the process and reinvest that money to be able to building a bigger amount of wealth. So those are the numbers
Hey,
about like, go ahead,
Susan,
Jason.
can
Yeah.
I ask one quick question? This
Yeah.
assumes that, like on the $100,000 per year, that you're investing $100,000 each and every year. It doesn't change. So even on the $10,000 per year, that makes the assumption that you're investing $10,000 in the first year, but you're also investing just $10,000 in year 15, in year
Exactly.
20. So, okay, just making sure that that's what
Exactly.
we're
I mean,
looking at.
there's no, that's a great, thank you, Jason, for asking any questions here. This is a lot, this is data. I'm a data, I come from a science and engineering background. So I present data, but I'm really trying to get the story out of this. And I appreciate any of your questions that you can bring up to help elicit that information. You're right. That is like, I'm just steadily investing $100,000 per year to get to this point. Now, these numbers are also showing like, what if I were to just continue to invest $100,000 and not pull that cash flow? So this chart would change if you started to pull out $100,000 of cash flow. Again, this is not showing, I'm going to show you a chart later, what the total net worth looks like here. This is just cash flow and proceeds. This is not that original principal. I mean, at year 7, you have $700,000 invested at that point, right? That number is way up higher here. So we're not looking at the total wealth number. But you're right. If for 24 years, all I can invest is $10,000 per year, that's not too bad. And on some salaries in the United States here and in the world, that might be the only thing that's going to be possible for you. But having the confidence and motivation that like, oh, I just have to do this for 24 years or 18 years at $20,000 a year, and I'm still going to get to live a really comfortable, potentially comfortable retirement, or and continue to see my portfolio grow beyond that. So that first year you might be pulling out $100,000 a year, but you're going to be able to grow with that. That's not sort of like, oh, a baseline that you have to maintain and potentially lower in future years as your portfolio continues to go down. And you, of course, most people, maybe they begin with $10,000 a year and then they can increase that. So there's all kinds of scenarios you can have in here. And it really brings back to, what are you tracking and what kinds of growth trajectories are you looking at? We set goals and they change every year. So I might have been able to invest $10,000 for 3 years in a row, but maybe now I'm able to invest $25,000 a year or $50,000 a year. That's going to change my trajectory towards my ultimate goal. I'm not sure if everybody has access or has built a spreadsheet, something like this, to be able to just game out what that could look like and when you could be living off of that income. But it can be really fun to be able to plug those numbers in and just, again, give you that end motivation. Sometimes I look at these numbers like this $2 million threshold and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's good motivation for me, that's going to happen within kind of like my foreseeable life, in other words. So this is fun. This came up in our popover yesterday, the idea of snowballing, right? So let's just take a look at this. What do we mean by snowballing? So um in year 11, we're able to pull $100,000 of cash flow. This is just from cash flow where we've removed the proceeds again. So this is just a fun scenario, but I want you to look at if you decided not to pull that, maybe in year 11, you're like, well, I'm doing fine. I really like my job. I don't need to pull that. Just 6 years later, you've got $500,000 per year in cash flow 6 years later. So it took you 11 years to get $100,000 and just 6 more years to be able to increase that by 5 to 5x your yearly cash flow. Okay. This is what we're talking about in terms of snowball. And this is why it's so exciting. Like yesterday on our popover, we had a younger investor who was just like, I'm deciding between all these different types of investments and I'm not sure what to do. And really, those of us in the room were just like, oh my gosh, congratulations. You're starting this journey so early and you're going to get to this spot way earlier than most people in your lifetime. It can be really exciting, but it's hard to feel that snowball when it's so tiny. So looking at these numbers is fun. Again, if you have just $50,000 a year invested, that's year 15 that you're going to pull out 100K, or year 22 if you're doing that $20,000 a year. And that snowball is looking like in 5 years, you've doubled your ability to pull out $200,000 a year with just $50,000 a year. Or if you want to wait a little bit longer, it's doubled in 6 years. So that snowball means that you're doubling in shorter and shorter timeframes every year. Just kind of a fun side scenario. So this
and
is, go
I had
ahead, Jason.
one little comment on that, the quick takeaway. That's all cash flow. That has nothing to do with the principal. So along the way, you're investing all this principal. So that money is still there. This is creating cash flow, real money that you can take off of that principal. So there's really, it's a bifurcated number. And we sometimes lose track of, well, gosh, I've got all that principal that at some point is going to come back on top of all the cash flow that's coming in. So yeah, really great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's easy to look at those numbers and sort of think like, oh, that's not actually a lot. But what it's not showing you is the underlying wealth growth that's just continuing to happen, so that you might be able to pull out $100,000 early, but pretty soon you're going to be able to pull out a lot more or live off a lot more. And I hope I have one chart at the end here. So stick with us to be able to kind of give you that scale difference between the cash flow versus your original principal and reinvesting that original capital back in. Because those were the two numbers that that I didn't put into those graphs. It's that $50,000 every year. And then when your asset sells, you're investing a new $50,000 a year every year, but you're also reinvesting that $50,000 of original principal going in there. So that quickly snowballs as well. Okay, so this second scenario I want us to look at is, what if you did want passive income sooner? For instance, this is Monica, a fictitious, wonderful lady that I created. Monica wants to start a baking school. And so she wants to be able to begin that sooner. And in order to do that, she needs to go part-time, let's say. So Monica, I've got a little spinny wheel here. I'm going to take a sip of my tea while it thinks. All right, so we're going to take this scenario of $50,000 per year investing. Now, in this scenario, we're investing our $50,000 a year, and we're also reinvesting that principal as it comes due, as it comes due every time. So in 5 years, you're going to, again, reinvest your $50,000 a year, you're new, and you're also reinvesting that original capital. This means that this chart that we're looking at is showing us that combination of regular annual cash flow plus the proceeds from the sale. That's why we're getting bump in year 6, because that's when our first asset is being sold and we're realizing those gains from that sale. So in year 16 here, right, we're able to reach surpass our $100,000 a year mark. And what I wanted to say is that this is wonderful because so this scenario, year 16 is a little bit longer. I presented to you year 12 for $50,000 a year earlier, where you could actually be pulling out 101. But if you're choosing to pull all of your cash flow and profits from day one, those aren't being invested. So it's going to take you 4 years longer to get to that 101. But along the way, year 5, you're pulling almost $18,000 a year. In year 11, that's jumping up to nearly $70,000 a year in passive cash flow, right? So there's all kinds of middle grounds here to be able to get you to your lifestyle goals. Maybe your goal is that $100,000 and you want to just like hustle your way to getting to that point, invest as much as you can early on so that you can just pull that cash flow and change your life like a flash. But maybe you have other goals where you're able to say, okay, I can supplement my income, maybe with a spouse's income, maybe with part-time work, and start my side hustle or take time off to be with my kids. And I'm able to live on smaller amounts. Or maybe Monica here says, well, I really need to start pulling my cash flow in year 6. That's when it's going to make a difference. So she's reinvesting it's this from the beginning. But this is this is wonderful to know because there's lots of ways that this can go. And it all comes back to what you're tracking and how you're leveraging the gains and profits from these real estate investments. And that's where your end of year activities of kind of assessing the year, looking at where you're at is so important to be able to set goals in the new year. Okay, this is that chart I've been alluding to. So this is showing us that tiny line down there is what we just looked at. That's the cash flow plus profit. But when I put it on the scale of your capital that's the capital that's invested, and then your total net worth, and the capital invested is that $50,000 every year, as well as reinvesting the original capital as those assets sell. And then your total. So the pink line is the combination of your cash flow and profit and your capital invested, right? This line is much bigger. That really pales in comparison, that cash flow line that we were just looking at. So this is that reminder that in the background, you've got massive wealth building happening. So you may actually look at it and say, you know what, I'm just going to start using my cash flow now to be able to get a massage once a month, to be able to go on a little bit cooler of a vacation, to increase that like daily lifestyle bump that you want to be able to, live a little bit more comfortably and happier. And you're not going to be sacrificing as much with your total net worth building here. This is a great scenario, for instance, if Monica here wants to be able to pass off her baking business to her 2 young kids, or to be able to set them up with the ability to start their own businesses right out of college, be able to fund their college their college time, or whatever she wants to do in terms of generational wealth. Okay, so our third point here today is understanding if you are on track to be able to hit these goals. What can you be doing this year? And we're talking 2023. So we're all coming into this lovely like rest and recover, hopefully, time period in the holidays. Maybe you've got some busy holiday activities to take care of, but hopefully you're taking some time to reflect and to just shore up all of your finances. Hopefully you've talked to your tax professional, you know what you need to do. If you need to make another investment this year, there's still time to do that, to get losses, to get gains, whatever you may be doing in your strategy. And we'll talk about even opportunities we have still open right now a little bit later. But this is the time to just like see what you've been doing before you start to make your plan and your goals for the new year. So first question, have you been investing enough every year? Have you been investing your $10,000, your 20, your 50, or your 100K? To look at this, track your investments. Put a spreadsheet together where you say, this is how much I invested every year up until this point, and make sure you're looking at those previous year amounts. Now, maybe you made 2 different investments and that equals $50,000, or maybe you did a little bit in the stock market and a little bit in real estate. I would encourage you to put that all into your spreadsheet. Okay, it's easy to track spending and savings amount, how much you're saving to invest, but we can often kind of leave this to just kind of like a big net worth tracker, like, oh yeah, I have those invested. But look at them, put them in front of you, see how much you've been investing in previous years. So what amounts of those have you been reinvesting? And I say this because have you been intentional about using your cash flow? This is the one element where it can just kind of like trickle into your account, and you may start to use it. It may just sit there, and then you see a big amount later, and you may not really associate that with the performance of your assets. Maybe you just reinvest that. This is sort of like the strategy of using your cash flow and tracking your cash flow from your investments, your real estate investments, because they're not automatically reinvested. That's not how passive real estate investing works right now. We're looking at that scenario, of course. So record how much cash flow you received this year. Maybe go back into your account, your statements, and look at actually how much cash flow came off of your investments. And then ask yourself, is that still there? Is that still in the account? Is that still in your savings? Did you spend it? I give you this example because lifestyle creep can quickly allocate those funds to other things. So if you don't have, you might choose to set up your account so that you have all of your cash flow going into a savings account that you don't really touch, you don't really look at. It's a separate savings account for your next investment. That's how I have it set up. But I didn't set that up until this year because I had cash flow coming into my accounts, and early on in some of these syndications, it's not a lot of cash flow because it's a value add plan. And maybe it was 100 or 200 or $300. It was just really easy for me to spend that money or move it around. And then all of a sudden, what happened? It kind of feels like what happened to that cash flow. So I want you to think about being intentional about using your cash flow. And if you're like, yeah, I want to use this cash flow, at least acknowledge that when it comes in, like, ooh, look at that. Set up an alert on your phone so that you can feel that, like, ooh, I just got a passive income boost. I didn't work for that money that just landed in my account. That can feel really good and give you that confidence and motivation to keep going on this long-term journey. All right, Jason, I'm going to pass the baton here to you because we've got some great options that are still open this year. If you need to, if you're like, oh, I didn't make my goals this year of investment, but you've got a little bit extra sitting on the sidelines from 10,000 to 50,000, we have options open for you. And Jason's going to tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Susan. It's fun to look at all these numbers and see how things can grow over time. I think we all tend to, this is easy stuff when you really boil it down, but we tend to not do this little simple step. So we don't even know what's coming in. And for those of us that have been doing this for a number of years, I can tell you I fall into that camp. I don't really look at what the numbers are that are coming in and the small trickles. Maybe there's $100 coming in here, $1,000 coming in there, and you stop paying attention to it. But if you really add it up and look to see how the growth is taking on and taking shape, it's pretty great. This is a game changer for sure. So part of that is understanding how to deal with the tax ramifications and the tax liabilities that all these gains create. And so right now we're at the end of the year. I get a lot of phone calls about folks that are saying, well, is there anything that I can do between now and literally 2.5 weeks from now to get some kind of losses? And we do have those. The first thing we've got up here right now, we've got our preferred equity fund that is open. This isn't going to create losses for you. It's actually going to create gains because of the way that this is done. So it creates passive gains starting next year once we place all the cash into different deals. So it's a slightly different thing. You're going to see gains on a monthly basis, and you get very consistent cash flow that's going to come in, and then there's going to be a slightly larger upside on the back end. But this doesn't create the losses that we're all looking for. Susan, if you can go to the next one, I think we're going to talk about, growth fund number 2. This is the first, well, it's actually first of 3 opportunities that we have available right now that will create losses for you. So the first is Goodegg Growth Fund 2, which is our crowdfunding pathway that allows all investors to come in. This is an investment in 2 hotels that we've already closed on in Kentucky, Fort Knox, Kentucky area, Candlewood Suites and Holiday Inn Express. So if you're looking to get involved with a deal that's already closed, that's already creating cash flow, that's already in great position, you do have about 2 more weeks to get involved in this one, and this will create losses today for 2023 of roughly 40% of your invested capital in 2023. So that's great. That's an avenue. If you go to the next one, I think that's going to talk
Well,
about the
and the
hotel
growth
fund.
fund too is the magic word for if you're able to invest only, you can invest minimum of $10,000. So the
Yes.
growth funds through that regulation crowdfunding pathway through the SAC, that's just a fancy way of helping non-accredited investors come into the same investment that our accredited investors are. So if you're looking at like, oh, my goal is $20,000 a year, the growth funds are the ones that are going to allow you to do that.
Yeah, much lower threshold to get in. So 10 grand is the magic number to get into those. The hotel fund is the accredited version of the exact same properties that we just saw. So we've already closed on the first 2 properties in this fund. This is for accredited investors only. Minimum threshold is $50,000. But this is available right now. We'll create those losses between now and the end of the year. So if you get your paperwork signed and you actually get money in over the next 2 weeks, you will get your portion of the losses for 2023. So that's an avenue. And again, this is for accredited investors only, minimum 50,000. We've got different tranches within that. And the next one is our wealth fund number 2. Well, we don't
We
even
don't
have it
have a
up here.
slide for it. Yeah,
But
because it's kind of like a
I'm gonna tell you
last,
about it. So we
yeah.
closed on an asset last week, a multifamily asset in Orlando, Florida, 215 unit, beautiful, brand new Class A multifamily property that we closed on that's creating cash flow right now. It's got losses in the range of 70 to 75% of invested capital, and there's still a little bit of room left in that within the equity stack. So if any of you want to get involved with multifamily before the end of the year and you want to create significant losses, this is your avenue. So please get onto our website. Just go to goodegginvestments.com/deals. You'll see them all right there. If you go to, it's at the top of the screen, goodegginvestments.com/deals. You can get into any one of these. And even though Wealth Fund number 2 is technically closed, we do have a little bit of room left in that one in the equity stack. So please jump in. And if there's any questions on that, feel free to get a hold of us directly. The next screen will tell you how to actually
Well,
communicate with us.
that's something I learned now that I'm kind of seeing the behind the scenes of how this all works, how passive real estate investing works, that at the end, at the close of a deal, sometimes there's this cool wiggle room step where we may or may not have space, but it's kind of like comes down to the end of the numbers. And if we have space, that's a really great time to jump in. Oftentimes we're oversubscribed and we certainly don't have space, but take advantage of it this time because it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And we're here. So reach out to us with questions anytime. You can reach Jason at investorrelations@goodegginvestments.com or just call us. That will get you to, they will send you to a real person as whoever happens to be available. And if we're not available, then we'll give you a call back within 24 hours typically. You can also reach me at Susan at Goodegg Investments if you have any questions too. And I'm always looking for questions because this is how we create our content. So you sending us questions is really helpful for you and for the other investors out there who might have the same question. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah. And we did just get a question from Cynthia. Cynthia, they asked what the minimum investment is. So between the 3 funds, Growth Fund number 2, Goodegg Growth Fund number 2, the minimum is 10,000. Goodegg Hotel Fund 1, the minimum is 50,000. Goodegg Wealth Fund 2, which is the multifamily asset in Florida, that minimum is 50,000.
Great question. Good to
And
summarize
another
that.
question from Aaron. We'll get these real quick before we sign off. Is it better to invest 50,000 once a year in one fund, or $25,000 in 2 funds, one at the start of the year and one later on?
Great question.
You know, it's really the way that our numbers were put together. They kind of assume the investment during that year. Could be at the beginning of the year, could be at the end of the year. I'm a big fan of diversification in any shape or form. So if we've got 3 different funds, I'm a big proponent of splitting up your dollars between those funds. It comes down to comfort for you. Some folks might love hotels and some folks might love multifamily. Some folks might love some of the alternative stuff that we've got out there, but it's wherever your comfort is. But we're going to give you multiple potentials, multiple opportunities to invest. I love the thought of breaking things up. So if your goal is 50,000 a year, it doesn't matter if it's a beginning or end, just get in for that year. And I think we're good. So I think that's it.
I would also just add quickly to that is that you never know what's going to happen later on. So I sometimes I feel like just keeping my money on the sidelines when there's a really good investment opportunity is silly. So if you have $50,000 at the beginning, try to find diversification sooner rather than like holding on to it for maybe a good deal, maybe down the road, because we never know what the market's what's going to happen. For instance, multifamily properties have been really few and far between recently to be able to pencil out a good deal. So if you were waiting on the sidelines for the next multifamily investment, you might be waiting a little bit longer than you wanted to. So think about that too.
Yeah. Okay, one last question, and then we're going to sign off. And I really appreciate everybody joining in here at the tail end. So, what are the values that you all use to choose which property to invest in? So it depends on the asset type, but we have a very rigorous set of numbers that we look at before we ever contemplate buying a property. So if it's in multifamily, I mean, it's everything from is there going to be a partner involved? What market is it in? What does supply look like in that market? What does occupancy look like overall in the market? What does the average rental change? What are projections for that market? So we're very rigid about what we have to have in place before we ever contemplate buying anything. We're not the type of group that just says, hey, there's something to buy, let's go buy it and hope that we can turn it into something. There has to be a great story behind it. And we have to be able to play that out. We're not buying these for just 6 months at a time. We're buying these to hold on to them for the next 5 to 7 years. We want to make sure that we're making smart moves. So it's a rigorous process, but we would love for you to get involved. So with that, I think we're going to call it a day. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. Susan, wonderful presentation. Thanks for putting it all together. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great end of the year.
Bye-bye.